With the advent of social media and the ridiculously lavish lifestyles we see paraded on Instagram, it's no wonder people nowadays want to make themselves look a little bit more sophisticated than they may actually be. But there are limits to this, right? Well, apparently, not for everyone. Some of us just cannot help but flex our material wealth for the gram. But we know how embarrassing it would be if somebody were to bust us as the broke wannabes that we all really are. But what if you were a celebrity or a famous athlete who went broke? Wouldn't you try your best to hide your financial difficulties from the world? Wouldn't you try to make things seem as glamorous as possible? Okay, maybe we're making too many excuses for these fake rich imposters. Maybe they should be taken down a notch. That's why today we're going through some of the most infamous fake rich ballers who got busted for being broke. One way to make a fortune is to earn it. But why go through all the hassle when you can simply convince people that you're already rich and have them give it to you instead? Well, that's what Anna Sorokin, or Anna Delvey as she was known to her victims, thought. For years, Sorokin pretended to be a German heiress with a trust fund that paid for her life of glamour and ease. She lived out of wildly expensive boutique hotels, wore designer clothes, and hung out in Manhattan's richest party circles. In reality, the 28-year-old Russian immigrant was completely broke. Despite that, she had everybody going. Somehow she even managed to borrow $100,000 from a bank, which she never intended to repay, of course. By the time the law caught up with her, Sorokin had already amassed over $200,000 in unpaid debts and was in the midst of negotiating a loan with a hedge fund. She wanted $25 million. Ultimately, this deceptive damsel got her just desserts, as a jury of her peers sentenced her to 12 years in prison in 2019. Johnny Manziel, or Johnny Football as he was known in his heyday, was the most exciting prospect in the NFL once upon a time. Manziel was obsessed with and surrounded by big money even before he made it into the NFL, as he was already racking up endorsement money by virtue of his stellar college career. Manziel gained a little bit of extra infamy for his egotistical attitude and his patented money sign, which he would often flash on field after making a dazzling play. But the fans loved him, and Johnny knew it. Unfortunately, after hitting the big time, Manziel became a bit too focused on grading the cheddar rather than throwing the rock. After being drafted in 2014, he was cut from the Cleveland Browns at the end of 2015, thus forfeiting an extra $2 million from his contract. But getting cut didn't stop Manziel from partying it up. The man loved to hit up the most exclusive clubs with his NFL friends, spending generously on booze and drugs. Although Manziel's Instagram would have you thinking that the kid is still living large, the fact of the matter is that Manziel's endorsements have completely dried up. With under $10 million in NFL earnings, we wonder how much longer Johnny Football will be able to support his lavish lifestyle. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, please be sure to click the like button and leave us a comment. Your engagement is what keeps us separating the fakers from the real deals. Okay, let's get back to it. Speaking of lavish lifestyles, they're all the rage these days on social media. In fact, an entirely new breed of celebrities has taken the world by storm thanks to Instagram, and that's the influencer. A prime example is 20-year-old Byron Denton. The London-based vlogger discovered that he received much more engagement through likes and comments after slightly editing some of his Instagram posts. From designer clothing, flights on a private jet, to attendance at some of London's most glamorous parties, Denton seemed to always be on the scene. Though he did have the help of some editing apps. Even though Denton admits he did not actually have any of the luxury goods he edited into his photos. Denton says it was all just a social experiment to see how easy it would be to fake a luxurious life to his followers. It turns out social media is definitely intoxicating and misleading. Another misleading Instagram account would be that of 39-year-old London businessman Tom Brooks, who was recently caught social media frauding. Tom Brooks' claim to fame is dating 90 Day Fiancé reality star Darcy Silva. As the result of this status, Brooks saw a large influx of followers and interest in his Instagram account in 2019. If you follow Tom Brooks on Instagram, you've probably already seen him flex a luxury lifestyle that's brimming with designer items and expensive frequent vacations. Unfortunately for Brooks, an Instagram investigator caught on to his act and publicized his fraudulent behavior. The investigator demonstrated that the pictures Brooks was posting were actually stolen from other users' accounts. Talk about embarrassing. Let this be a word of warning. It's tough to live down a reputation as an Instagram faker. Allen Iverson is an absolute NBA legend, with a career earnings upwards of $150 million. That's not too shabby, right? $150 million would probably be enough to keep the average person for a lifetime, or two, or three. But not for Mr. Iverson. Somehow, the NBA legend managed to spend all of his NBA earnings, and before the age of 45, with expensive tastes in jewelry, a penchant for beautiful, fast, and impractical cars, and a bad gambling habit, Iverson had little trouble torching through his nest egg. Although he doesn't play in the NBA anymore, Iverson's name does still have earning power, and he has recently appeared in Ice Cube's Big Three basketball league. Although he lives modestly from day to day, you wouldn't know it by taking a look at his designer clothes and jewelry. He was savvy enough to leave himself a locked fund, which can only be accessed when he turns 55. The fund has plenty of money for him to retire on, if he can manage to fix his spending habits before then. One thing that all rich people seem to have in common is their love for gold, right? Well, if you were trying to fake it, it would only make sense that you'd want to surround yourself with gold then. That's just what this man in India did when he decided to get his BMW gold-wrapped. If you walk down the streets of Dubai or London in the summertime, you'll see the gold-plated Lamborghinis and Range Rovers that have become the calling card of rich oil barons and cheeky billionaires. However, this man in India tried to pull the look off on a budget, and it really backfired. Well, it's hard to feel sorry for this guy, and hey, he did manage to go viral because of this, even if it was for the wrong reasons. With more and more people trying to get famous looking rich without any substance to back it up, it's only natural that some anti-poser vigilante account would sprout up in response. Enter Ballerbusters. In February of 2019, this Instagram account popped up and began to wreak havoc on the superficial Instagram influencer community. The goal of Ballerbusters was to expose phony entrepreneurs by using a mix of screenshotted receipts, memes, and crowdsourced information to find the people who weren't acting their wage. The account goes after what they call flex offenders, who use the veneer of luxury and riches to sell their mentorship, membership, online classes, or lifestyle products. One example of the account's work was when they exposed a teenage shipping entrepreneur who was posting photos of his $8 million penthouse, only to have Ballerbusters dig up the Airbnb account for the penthouse that the kid was actually just renting. Ultimately, the account administrator says he wants to help people steer clear of online scams and from expensive advice from fake entrepreneurs. And we think that's pretty noble of him. Our next broke baller was once on top of the world. Or, as he put it, I'm Ric Flair, the stylin', profilin', limousine-riding, jet-flying, kiss-stealing, wheelin' and dealin' son of a gun. Ric Flair is one of the most famous superstars to ever come out of the WWF and WWE. He was known for his flamboyant and luxurious nature boy persona, and the real-life antics and lifestyle that seemed to closely mirror his onstage persona. Even while Flair was earning big money wrestling, the man had money problems. He recently explained in a podcast with fellow WWE legend Stone Cold Steve Austin that he once had to borrow $800,000 from WWE boss man Vince McMahon. Even though the former WWE champion is dealing with money issues, no one would ever suspect it from the dapper suits and expensive robes he's always wearing. Luckily for Flair, he still has a flair for the ring, and has recently returned to the WWE as a manager for his daughter, who also wrestles. In the 1970s, Burt Reynolds was one of the biggest stars in the world, perhaps best known for his roles as Paul Crewe in 1974's The Longest Yard, and as Bo the Bandit Darville in 1977's Smokey and the Bandit. Reynolds was a celebrated actor who died in 2018 at the age of 82. However, in spite of his long and storied career, Reynolds managed to make a mess of his finances. Since the 70s, Reynolds racked up so much debt that he eventually started selling his movie memorabilia just to keep afloat. Though the actor often denied it, it was clear that in the twilight of his career, he was prone to taking some of the worst roles he'd ever been offered, just out of sheer need. In 1996, he even filed for bankruptcy after acquiring over $10 million of debt. This debt was amassed due to his lavish lifestyle and spending habits. Well, we guess it's true what he used to say, quote, "It's always possible to spend more money." Last on the list, but probably first on your mind, is currently the most famous man in the world, Donald J. Trump. Yes, at one time, he did in fact come incredibly close to being completely broke. That is, until he learned to navigate the system, and shrewdly filed for corporate bankruptcy instead of personal bankruptcy. He actually did this several times, making use of loopholes in the law to wipe away as much of his company's debts as he could, while they still remained legally entitled to conduct business. He made use of this savvy loophole as recently as 2009, after Trump Entertainment Resorts were hit especially hard by the 2008 recession. This is how he was allowed to be bailed out while still spending more than it takes to run a small city. You'd think that after 4 bankruptcies, the man would be thoroughly investigated, but as it stands, he's still spending money like he's printing it, and now we guess technically he is. Well, that's all for us today. Which of these fakers was the most outrageous? Share some of the posers we may have missed in the comments.